Hello everyone, thank you for coming. Today we have our second conversation in English on the topic of organization from a psychic perspective, and I welcome Kardash, Namu, Jesse and Matthew. So friends, according to you, what could be an organization driven by a psychic perspective in your experience and in your wish?
Okay, so the first thing that occurs to me when I hear the question organization from a psychic perspective is that I'm not entirely sure what exactly psychic means. It has a whole bunch of different meanings in my mind. Like I think of a psychic as someone who reads minds, or the psychic. I'm not entirely sure, so I just had to quickly look it up. So that here the definition that we have from ChatGPT is psychic refers to phenomena or abilities that are beyond normal human perception or explanation, often associated with the mind, intuition, or supernatural forces. People who identify as psychics claim to have extrasensory perception that allows them to sense information or events not accessible through ordinary senses. Common psychic abilities include, and they give us a whole bunch of psychic abilities. I don't think it's necessary to read them. I think to me what's relevant here is intuition. I suppose also there's the sense that the beyond normal human perception or explanation or supernatural forces. I think so intuition and supernatural forces allows them to sense information or events not accessible through ordinary senses. So I think, the intuition and this accessing information through non-ordinary channels, to me, they seem to be the ones that are relevant to psychic organization in Auroville. I think the theory, what I've always interpreted it to mean is that we organize we organize ourselves, our lives. So we have personal organization, the way we conduct ourselves, the decisions we make individually, and then the way we organize ourselves as a community, as a gathering of people. Sometimes, if it's just more than one person, how do we organize a relationship between two people? How do we organize a relationship with 3 people, 10 people, 20? Auroville now is, I think, 2,500. So now we're talking about how do we organize from a psychic standpoint, 2,500. And so the sense of psychic organization immediately invokes the concept of non-psychic organization. And so when I think of non-psychic organization, I immediately imagine standard, rational, pragmatic frames of governance. So you immediately create a group, either selected by some kind of leader or selected through a democratic process, that then handle greater good systems like conflict resolution, infrastructure, how do we handle the economy of the local community, how do we, can we save money by sharing costs, can we find ways to get together to explore how we can work better as a team, as a community. So this is the standard non-psychic approach. And so when I hear the phrase psychic organization, I imagine decisions being made based on feeling. I think what you often see in non-psychic systems is every time there's a problem, the first response by an organizing entity or group is to come up with a framework of rules, or a new rule that governs everybody. Everybody has to abide by this rule. And so what we have today, like the standard legal framework that the world lives on, most nations live under today, is a set of rules that are essentially created for a minority of the population. The rules are created for those few that are antisocial or who steal or cause harm. The rules are or drive too fast in their car, don't stop when they see people on the road. Basically, so these rules govern. They're created to stop this small collection of kind of antisocial behaviors from occurring, but the rules govern and limit the behaviors of all of those that would otherwise make the right decision anyway. They don't need rules to stop them from behaving this way. They behave like this just because that's their natural instinct. So I think this is the non-psychic way of organizing. I think the psychic way, if you're going to intuitively respond, is to respond on a case-by-case basis, to respond to the needs of each moment, and to not come up with frameworks, rigid frameworks that govern everyone's behavior and everyone's lives, but deal with, often like they say, doctors can often address apparent physical conditions by just listening to their patients, by just saying, and what's going on in your life? How are you feeling? How's your mum and how's your dad and your brother and your sister? Are you okay? Are you happy at home? And often by just having a conversation about this and being heard transforms the physical conditions. Suddenly people feel better. What they thought were physical conditions disappear just because the doctor has responded in a non-mechanical way. They've responded, I would argue, in a psychic way, intuitively. They've gone beyond the obvious linear short-term response, which is to diagnose with medicine, to say here's an injection or a pill or an antibiotic or some kind of mechanical system. They've listened to their heart and they've said, this person needs to be heard. And this is the kind of judgment that's really hard to make in a kind of rational, logical world. But it is the kind of judgment you can make if you live in an intuitive world, in an intuitive space. So if you open your heart and operate from beyond the mind, which I think is what spirituality is teaching us to do. The mind is an artificial, superficial mechanism. We exist in a space beyond the mind, which is located through meditation, or access. One of the ways to access it is through meditation. That's why meditation is such a big part of spiritual teaching. It helps us connect to that non-brain center that's beyond the material plane. And if we act from there, then we act intuitively and I would argue psychically. And if we can make decisions and respond from that place, then we're acting psychically, intuitively, and that's where psychic organization has to emerge from, I believe.
Thanks for that, Jesse.
You're welcome.
Yeah, this is a tricky one to answer because at the moment Auroville is not a self-governing entity. But that idea of being ruled or governed by the spirit, the spiritual, I was very inspired back when, the Citizens' Assembly thing happened in the rest of the world, and the way people were elected to become part of the Citizens' Assembly was like jury service, so it was random. And that idea of randomness really sort of sparked my imagination, because if you go back to the early days of Auroville, then if you had a question, it was answered by the mother. Very, very simple. You go to that person, she gives you the perspective of the spiritual on the question that you're asking. And I think the trouble with most forms of governance is they're fixed, they're rigid, which is what Jesse was talking about. And it's an extremely rare thing for me to quote anything by the Mother or Sri Aurobindo, but one bit that sticks in my mind is the Mother saying fixed structures should be avoided wherever possible. Don't have fixed, rigid structures in terms of behavior and governance. So how do you bring randomness into governance? And one idea that I had was you've got one group of people who are coming up with solutions to problems. and then the decision as to whether you implement those ideas is decided by someone else who's randomly chosen. People are randomly chosen. You could even go as far as if you've got, let's say you've got 3 or 4 competing ideas, put them in different coloured envelopes. So people choose blindly. You know, you sit there, you center yourself, you meditate, and then you choose which way to go. You know, that might sound ridiculous, I don't know. But if we are to get away from the idea of fixedness and fluidity, I think it would really be a blessing if you take away the decision-making process from the people who come up with the ideas. And if the decision-making process is random and the whole community is involved in it, that could be a different way of doing things.
I'm fascinated by the idea of randomness because it makes me question how much of anything do we actually control, right? Matter of fact is that, I mean, at least the way that I see it at the moment, is that no matter how much we want to control something, there's very little control that we actually have over pretty much anything. Even the thing that I want to eat tonight, there's very little control that I have over it. It might just happen that I get into an accident on my way out and I don't end up having dinner. Or I decide that I want to have chicken, but the shop is out of chicken. And that's just for me having dinner. So when it comes to governance and how we're organizing ourselves as a whole collective, I want to ask, why are we so caught up in this idea of controlling, of how we want an outcome to be perceivable through my choice? And what is that my? Who is that my when we're talking about my choice, my way? I've been really fascinated recently with genetics, and there's this whole idea of epigenetics, where things from 7 generations before still affect the way that you think, the way that you feel. So if I had an ancestor 7 generations ago who had gone through starvation, there would be still remnants of that gene influencing me today, right? So again, then who is the me that we're talking about? Is it really me who decides to have dinner tonight and decides to have chicken? Or is chicken a preconceived thing from my genetic coding that I feel like I need to eat because I'm scared of starving the next day? It's a bad example, perhaps, but the kind of point that I want to bring up when it comes to psychic being and organization, my current understanding of this, and it's possibly wrong, is that for me, at the moment, psychic being is the kind of being that when I can be aware of as much of these automatic processes in my body as possible, what kind of decisions can I make? When I'm aware that, I want to eat chicken just because my forefathers could barely ever eat chicken, and there's like an automatic craving to it. If I'm aware about it, what is the difference that I can make in my choice? And when we're talking about organizing in a psychic perspective, I think more than deciding how exactly to randomize or not randomize or whatever, I think what for me is more important is what is the common goal? Why are we organizing? I think it's a question that's also, I think, left out sometimes. And I would like to suggest, what if we try to organize in order to thrive? And not in order to thrive just as individuals, but as wide of a horizon as we can grasp. What if we can organize in order for our local environment to thrive? What if we can organize in order for our entire country, or it's a notion, but our entire country to thrive? And even wider still, how can we make the whole global, we'll start with economy, how can we make the global economy thrive? And then how can we make just life on Earth thrive? And if we have that kind of commonality that we're driving towards, and it's kind of widely understood that this is what we're driving towards, then I think it's each individual's responsibility to try and see what are all my personal inhibitors. Why am I greedy towards certain things? Why would I like to have more than my fellow partners, the people around me? Why do I have an extractive mindset towards nature? There's a lot of questions, and maybe when we kind of get through all of these things with the idea of thriving in the middle, perhaps we don't even need organization. All we need is the right intention to be set, and for all of us to be working towards that intention. And life itself organizes itself. Like organization, I would like to point out, is perhaps just a fragment of our small effort in trying to understand the vast complexity of the nature that we're around.
No, I just realized I remembered what I wanted to bring into the last meeting, and I felt like, so there was a couple of things, and one of them is, I was just, somehow this conversation reminded me of it. And so it's related to an approach, I suppose, to psychic organization as the way I would intuitively and also on some level, from some sort of a knowing that is just not just intellectual. And it's related to the approach that I would imagine would be actually a way to thrive, and which is not mechanical. It's just, I can term it in the simplest of ways, which is what is good for you is good for me. So it is a shift of relationship. So it's like approaching organization with changing the relationship with self and the others. Because in the past, as we, the word evolution is used quite a lot, Sri Aurobindo and Mother, and it's now within the spiritual communities they talk about how now there's a awakening taking place, and it's part of this evolution now. And so prior, the process of evolution that we can reflect on now, let's say the past, 10,000 years approximately, that part of evolution is based on human species trying to survive. So it's a survival mode, and it's to make our species thrive. We can produce babies, we can look after each other, and we keep each other safe. And so there's two types of, what I understand, two types of relationships that are within that sort of framework of survival. And one is transactional, and the other one is utilitarian.
What is it?
Transactional and utilitarian. Utilitarian, yeah. I'm not sure if I'm the best person to describe it now because
No, you are.
So, for example, are you guys aware with these terms? Do I need to?
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you. Okay, great. And so, the way to my best understanding is in order to flip that survival mode into now a more deeper thriving on a deeper level, where it's on a deeper, where it's heart-based. It's the point. So I would suggest to bring, I would like to see that come into the approach to the organization. So what is good for you is good for me. So what happens then, in my understanding, is that the mechanical side of things, which has and the mechanisms that I understand that are in the way of freeing the psychic being from the burdens and from certain beliefs. These mechanisms are based in survival, and they are mechanical in a way of like a structural egoic way of how can I say it? It's like there's the structures that are running underneath us, and then based in I needs. I need to survive. I need to make my tribe survive, and I'm gonna make sure that my family, is good, and I produce babies in order for this DNA to go on. And so, to me, that is mechanical. To me, that is mechanical, and I think we find ourselves constantly bouncing off all these different sort of, because within that there are strategies of how to survive. It's just very natural, I think, very animal, and so, and I feel like that it's like this martyr of what is good for you, what is good for me, can sort of expose those mechanisms, because then there's sort of some sort of reference, because otherwise, if my mechanical behavior or however it manifests, if it doesn't bring happiness, if it causes suffering to others, then it shows that there is something in there, which is that relationship, which is utilitarian and transactional, because it's based in my needs type of thing. And so that motto flips it out away from my needs, which are not excluded, actually, I believe, but it's really widens the possibility for the mind to relax and ground itself in the heart. So, and that is kind of, I suppose, an approach to an organization, psychic organization, that I am experimenting with, and the work I do is based in that sort of direction. So, it's just, when the mind one surrenders to their heart, it's quite a different being. It's quite a way of being, and Sri Aurobindo is pointing, and Mother pointing to sincerity and surrender. And my best understanding is they're pointing to those mechanisms, those egoic mechanisms of survival, and so the part of the evolution is to reflect on those, and that itself can open to that less rigid, less controlling sort of way, which is kind of narrow, and it's actually, and the opposite is widening. So yeah, that's what I would like to say.
So, so much of what I'm hearing being said here today is really kind of, for me, it all just follows really neatly in this wonderful, coherent through line that seems to follow the ideas that we talked about earlier. What occurred to me as I listened to Kadash and Namu is that organization is only really necessary in pre-evolutionary states of being. Like where we are now, we now exist in this, I've often heard this reference to our brains are a series of brains stacked up. So they start at the bottom, the lowest brain is the reptilian brain, and this is where most of our information is, and our instincts, our instructions to act are coming from the reptilian brain. This is the oldest part of the brain. Controls basic survival functions, breathing, heart rate, instinctive behaviors like fight or flight responses. And this has kind of the highest, this is the lowest point in our brain. It's where actually the first messages come from. And this is what we're battling a lot of the time when we're trying to build community systems or organize. After that, you've got the limbic system, paleo-mammalian brain, evolved in early mammals to regulate emotions, memory, and social bonding. So this came second. It includes, then we've got the last one, the neocortex, the neo-mammalian brain, which is what we have now. The most recent addition, prominent in primates and humans, responsible for higher order functions like reasoning, language, planning, and abstract thought. So what's happening now is these impulses are moving through these brains in that order. The lizard brain is the primary brain. It's this selfish, kill everybody and take what I need at all expense, build a wall, keep away competitors, eliminate all alternative forms of life, extractive relationship with the world around you, I suppose you could argue, like Namu said. But this framework is redundant. What you see is that one of the great evolutionary shifts that humans made was collaborative. When we started to work as teams, when we started to hunt as teams, when we started to build as teams, we were better hunters, better gatherers, and better. We raised children better. We are able to, like they say, it takes a village to raise a child. If you have a group of 12 people, it's easier to raise children than to be alone with one person or just two. One of you has to stay with the child, one of you is going to go out and find food. If you've got three, two can find food, one can stay with the child. If you have so, collaborative work is one of the great evolutionary shifts and is what has made us successful. One of the things that's made us successful as a species, our ability to work together. I mean, I've heard this random statistic thrown around a couple of times that the total weight of humans on the planet is equal to the total weight of ants. So we're both, in terms of mass mobilization, equally as successful. Ants and humans have different approaches to success as a species, and the two defining characteristics of humans and ants, what we share, is our collaborative teamwork systems. Even though humans our history seems to be all about war. Like every time you're taught history in school, it's all about the wars, So this war, that war, it's all about warring. But actually, what has really defined human culture is collaboration, where we get together, we're in teams, we build communities. And so the fact that we're talking now about organization and psychic organization is an artifact or a symptom of our success. The fact that we're talking about it is why we're here talking about it. Because we organize ourselves to the point of survival and thrival, to the point now where we're having really kind of interesting, deep conversations and examinations of what it means to organize. But that's only because the only reason we need to organize is because we have to wrestle with the lizard brain impulses, which are, they're anti-collaborative. They're separatist. They exclude. So if we could move our entire awareness beyond the lizard brain and operate purely from the heart, like Kardash said, bypass the entire thinking system and act intuitively, in theory, organization wouldn't be necessary. We would just be living in a wider space, like Kardash said. And by width, it expands out, like Namu said, beyond us, beyond our community, beyond our immediate bioregion, to the wider systems on the planet. And that's the idea of, so if we can operate, if we can somehow get beyond the impulses of the lizard brain, beyond the brain, because there's a whole higher system that operates. Like intuition is actually this super intelligence that lies behind. This is my experience, and this is what meditation shows you. If you turn off the brain, which seems to tell you that it is everything, if you turn off the thing that says it is everything, you discover that there is actually something much more powerful behind the brain or below the brain, or they're operating all the time. That's actually making most of the intelligent, powerful decisions. And the brain, which says I'm the one that's making the decisions, is in fact getting in the way, I find a lot of the time, of making good decisions. I mean, there's a great book called Blink, which says that you know the answer in like half a second, and then your brain spends the rest of the time arguing with you about how you're wrong, how your instincts are wrong, and that you've actually, but if you trust your intuition, that's the truth, and it's very quick. It immediately knows the answer to things, and the brain is all about overthinking and examination, and so meditation removes us from that. All right, yes, I wanted to also say that spirituality, or the notion of spirituality or connection with the psychic or psychic organization, or organization in general, all of these things are much less challenging to do in abundance, in times of abundance. When we have enough food, when we're not under attack, when the air is warm, when we have enough water, when there is no obvious conflict or issue or danger or threat, or amazing time pressure, whatever constraints you'd like to apply, it's very easy to appear spiritual and balanced and intuitive and good. But the moment you are starving and have very little food, and you are placed in a situation where you have to consider, whether do I eat this food myself, or do I give some of it to those around me? Do I divide it with everyone around me? This is really, to me, where your spirituality or your connection with the psychic is tested, because there you're suddenly battling with the lizard brain. The lizard brain is there going survive, 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 and starvation or extreme cold or extreme danger or fear. All of these things operate from the lizard brain, and it's in those moments when those things are activated that this is really the test of. And to me, that these have been the moments in my life where I've really said, "Wow, this is now where I kind of what's the word? Set myself against the benchmark. Like where do I? This is where I really explore where I am, or make a decision about where I am spiritually or psychically."
I'm just beginning to wonder if this whole idea of organisation and governance is a red herring, is a misdirection. Because all there is you and me. And, you know, there's just how I act towards you. So maybe we're just overcomplicating things by trying to take the idea of, you know, individual spirituality and how do you use that as a controlling force on other people when you don't actually have any control over other people, because you don't. You know, the only person you can ever change is yourself. So maybe we only need to think about how we behave. So coming back to what Kardash was saying earlier, it made me think of that often quoted line from Jesus, which is given to us in the Bible as "do unto others as you would have them do to you," which is actually a mistranslation, deliberate or otherwise. Many other teachers were saying the same thing at round about the same time, and the way they actually put it is, don't do to other people the things that you do not want done to yourself. And when you look at it that way, it just makes it so obvious and so easy to put into practice. So I think if we just have compassion as a guiding force and respect for yourself and respect for other people, maybe that's all we need. Because, you know, when you're talking about the lizard brain, just this picture of Donald Trump came up in my mind. I mean, you know, it's there. Me, mine, you know, walls, hate the foreigner. Yeah, I mean, again, this whole discussion is very academic in terms of Auroville, because we do not govern ourselves. We are governed. But then, so the only choice that I have is, how do I respond to that governance? So I suppose the challenge to us is, how do we live in the situation that we're living with compassion and love and respect towards everyone? I don't know.
I really like the lizard brain analogy that came up. Who I can only consider as one of my gurus, likes to say that he speaks about the three different kind of brains: the lizard brain, the mammalian brain, and the cognitive brain, and he puts them as switches. So the lizard brain has two options. It has feeling safe and feeling unsafe. The emotional brain, the limbic brain, has two switches as well. It has feeling at ease, meaning feeling comfortable, and feeling dis-ease, feeling uncomfortable. And then only when those two things are aligned, then the cognitive brain.
It's a flow.
It's a flow. So unless you're feeling safe, you can't feel ease.
Yes, you can't access the next brain.
You can't access it, no, it's blocked. And if you're not feeling safe and at ease, you actually can't control your brain. It's why when something suddenly drops, your brain just stops and you jump, right? You're like, oh damn, what's going on?
Your higher thinking goes.
Your higher thinking just goes out the window. And also your emotions, right? Even if you're feeling safe, if you're feeling a lot of unease in your emotional state, you're feeling a lot of anger or whatever it may be, then your higher brain is also not working, right? You're full of anger. You're like, forget this person, I'm going to...
It's just turned off.
Exactly.
It's all happening down here.
It's just not working. It's not operational. And so when we're talking about do unto others or don't do unto others, I think it's quite simple. It's quite a selfish act, in fact. You want to make other people feel safe so that they can feel at ease, and then we can actually interact with each other as full beings using all three parts of our brain. And this heart and mind analogy, I think there is a large sense of truth to it, but one piece that's missing perhaps, or a few, whatever, is also the interconnectedness of our own bodies, right? We have a lot of neurons in our stomach, for example, which deal with all the hormones and enzymes, something. It's all influenced, it's all connected. So therefore, if we're not feeling integrated with all three parts of our body, then we're not really fully there either, perhaps. And why should we do unto others how we want unto ourselves or whatever? At the end, it's a selfish act of wanting to be able to interact with others in the best way possible. And if we're perhaps talking about psychic organization or organizations of this sort, maybe one thing that we have been forgetting about is that we all want to feel safe and we all want to feel at ease. And only once that is happening, then we can truly thrive. And to force someone who's not feeling safe or not feeling comfortable to be accessing their highest spiritual being, perhaps is a form of violence. Perhaps. And then the second thing that I wanted to talk about is also a dragon. Dragons. I mean, when I say dragon, we all get a picture in our own minds, right? And we have maybe different interpretations of a dragon from however we have interacted with dragons in pop culture or video games or whatever. We all have our own idea, own understanding. But I don't know, I can't say I've seen a dragon in real life. It's not a physical thing in reality, right? And I have that kind of feeling, same like dragons, when we talk about economics, governance, finance, they're all kind of like dragons to me. Like, okay, we've defined them as something. We all have different ways of interacting with it or feeling towards it. But when we break it down, what is it? Is it really something real, or is it a bunch of dinosaur bones that some person looked at and said, oh, those must have been giant winged creatures, you know? Our economics, our finances, this drive to get rich, whatever. Like, how much of the things that we're doing are actually just idiocracy that have become so complicated that we can't even see it for what it is. I think at this point in humanity, we've gone past all the parts of working together and kind of being able to control our environment around us. I think it's about time we try to take control of ourselves, right? And perhaps one of the gifts that we can really give each other is to try and create that safety and that emotional ease between ourselves, at least.
Yeah, that idea of being physically safe and having all your needs being met before you can progress to the higher reasoning. Yeah, I don't know if you've ever thought about everybody from Gautama Buddha to the Mother and Sri Aurobindo, and on and on. Those are all people from high class backgrounds. They are people who already had all their financial and they got a roof over their head, they got food on the table, they'd got the money to buy books, they'd got the time to write books instead of having to work in the rice fields all day. It is a luxury to be in a position to devote all your time to that higher reasoning. It was only when John Lennon was worth 20 million he said, "Imagine no possessions." He wasn't saying that when he was 18 years old. Yeah. But then, to bring it back to more reasonable proportions, there's not one of us around this table who lacks a roof over his head or food on the table. Warm enough in the day and just about cool enough at night. So, yeah.
I just wanted to follow what Matthew was saying, that sitting, like to be invited by somebody to sit and talk about these ideas, about, like, you could argue, not immediately mission critical ideas. I mean, we don't need to figure out psychic organization today to survive tomorrow. It is a long-term, grand discussion. And it's rare that you're invited into a space to actually explore these ideas. These are ideas that are central to Auroville's ideology and dream, but it's really rare that we actually get together and have conversations like this about what they mean to all of us. And you can see how there's so much to be said. Like, there's so many fascinating and wonderful and super structural and critical ideas and input that come from these conversations. It's a great joy to be part of these conversations. I thank Dan very much for creating this space and for inviting us here, because this is a great luxury. Not only to have a roof over your head. I mean, this is like the next level. I've got a roof over my head. I'm not cold at night. no danger there. I have food to eat. There's no immediate threat. And I have the time and the space and someone like Dan in the community to invite me and a collection of like-minded individuals into a room where we can talk, we can explore these ideas. And it's just amazing how rich and productive this conversation is. And how I was also talking about, I don't know whether I said to Dan or to Jodis, my wife, how these conversations are not just about what we say here in this room. It's not just about the content of our words. It's also about the fact that we, by concentrating on these ideas and invoking them within us and organizing them within us, we create a kind of energetic field. We create a vibrational state that expands out. I mean, you could expand out in a very mechanistic way. I go out and I talk to people and I say, wow, I was in this great conversation and it was wonderful, it was very productive. And then I think also in a non-mechanistic way, like a non-imperceptible way, I believe that it does radiate out through space and into the universe and change the fabric of space-time, the vibration, because everything is vibration and frequency. And so by focusing, by what we're doing is we're kind of together. Dan has invited us to ring this beautiful bell, which is now resonating throughout all space and transforming it for the better. Thank you, Dan.
I had this thing just go boom as soon as I heard you talking about vibrations and frequencies, because on the deepest of the observations, from the ones who looked at the reality of this world, and what is truth, and and I heard it coming from different angles. And when they're talking about vibrations and frequencies, how if you beyond anything that we perceive, like beyond the perception, it's just vibration and frequency. And going back to the psychic being, to the approach from psychic perspective, it's kind of like, then when I think about vibrations and frequencies, then it's clear to me that when I give them a meaning, when I give them a word, when I give them, when I have a relationship with it, that personal relationship that is based on I am and I have, and therefore I think, or I think therefore I am. So, it could be actually, either in a way. But what I'm saying is that somewhere along the way, that our intellect picked up that perception, and it's created that sort of a filter between I, or what is even actually, where there's psychic being, and then there's an I am, and then there's a vibration, and so that I am becomes the filter, and which is in a way between the direct experience of psychic being with and the vibration itself. So, this is probably like a crude way of explaining it, of how I kind of over time, how those observations sort of resonated with me. So I suppose when I'm thinking of perspective, I'm thinking of, yet again, I'm using the word approach to the governing according to the psychic perspective. So the approach that I would have is to, how can I say it, clean out the filter. Or maybe just really, just see if that filter is useful anymore or not. And perhaps when that filter loses our attention and the time and our life force, maybe it can just go back to where it comes from, and then the perspective is crystal clear, perhaps, on some level at least.
Just continuing with what Kardash was saying about the notion of a filter, it feels to me as if there is a universal center. There's a source from which everything comes. One source that is all of us. We're all just this single energetic presence being expressed through myriad forms on the material plane. So the material plane is essentially multiple perspectives. Beyond the material plane, there's just one universal energetic entity. And the material plane, some of this was a rationale that I came up with one day trying to understand the mechanism of what's going on here. And I thought perhaps the material plane is an opportunity for this single experiencing entity, which is all of us. We all think it's us, but it's actually, this is what it just feels like to be, this universal entity. It is an opportunity for the entity to experience matter from multiple perspectives, from every sentient being, or from every being that can perceive. It experiences. It's like having 1,000 tiny nerve endings or fingertips. It's like putting your fingers into the sand or running your hand through the water. It is the spirit experiencing matter, and each of our. That's why we're all different. Each of us supplies the spirit with a different perspective on matter. And so matter in a way is the filter. It is like matter by the spirit is infinite and perfect because it's not bound by anything, and matter is finite and imperfect. And that's but both need each other for this experience to exist. This is the intersection of spirit in matter. It's spirit experiencing matter, and so the experience of the spirit passing through the filter of matter is kind of necessary. We need the filter The filter is I mean, for sure, we can definitely clean the filter if we feel the filter is not exactly as clean as it could be, or whether cleanness is what we want. Sometimes a dirty filter is also really interesting. It's like we don't want to I don't want to make value judgments about what a filter should be or what matter should be. And then Namu was talking before about how philanthropic acts can be considered selfish. And I've asked myself this question also, like, if I do something kind for somebody, I help someone, I feel good about myself. I feel like, wow, that was a good thing I did there. I'm a good guy. And then I think, oh my God, but my wonderful philanthropic selfless act has become a selfish act. I'm now kind of patting myself on the back, and I find myself it becomes like a rationale for doing good things. I go out there because I want to believe in myself as a person that does good, but it also makes me feel good to do good, and that's kind of how it's meant to work. Do good, it'll make you feel good. There's a great Madagascar Christmas special where King Julian is sitting on a pile of presents, and he's saying, and there's a little fluffy animal beside him with no presents. And King Julian's sitting on the pile of presents, and he says, I feel so empty inside. And there's a little fluffy animal looking sad by the side, and he picks up one present and he goes, all right, take a present. And he gives one present from the pile of presents to the little fluffy animal. And the fluffy animal takes the present and jumps up and down and squeals with joy and saying, "Meow!" And King Julian sees the little fluffy animal with one present, so happy, and he's like, oh, I feel happy inside. And so it's like, so at some point you've got to, where do you do it? How do you disappear from where it's like when you seek to be egoless, you go, oh yes, I've achieved the state of ego. We mentioned this last time. I have achieved the state of egolessness. Yeah. Exactly. It's like meditation, your brain is empty and you're like, yes, I'm not thinking, and then suddenly you've got, it's like this, I don't know, so it's like this, I feel like it's like a spiral, an infinite spiral. You reach forever into the center of the spiral, but you can never get there. The further you reach, the more the spiral continues. It forever recedes. That's infinity. And so the infinite loop of trying to be as selfless and do as much good as you can truthfully and honestly is always going to be caught up in the kind of the muck and the filter of what it is to operate on a material plane. Ego is made up, it's a sticky stuff that exists in matter. We need ego. Ego is one of the defining, is one of the engine rooms of separation, and the universal presence needs separation. It needs identity and different perspective for it to have a full, diverse experience of matter. So ego is a necessary device. The danger is when ego becomes disproportionate. It gets in the way. It's almost like when you have like a gigantic ego-filled presence, like your head is so large that your body just falls over. You crash to the ground because so ego is like it's one of these, it's so subtle and creepy, not creepy, it's subtle and tricky and operates at the kind of root level of your system. And so every time you try and remove it, it's right there. It's like, yes, good, I am now transcendent. I have removed all ego. And in this empty, transcendent space where you have removed all ego is standing there right beside you going, yeah, good job, man. Good work, absolutely. Like, what? How did you get here? It's like, anyway.
I'm glad you said it, what you just said now. There's an interesting word or way of that, I don't know, I think it's Sri Aurobindo is talking about, and maybe the mother. Yes. And it's an identification, and so, when you talk about the ego, I don't think it's obviously, it evolved, and it's, to fight with it, perhaps it just makes it worse, and trying to be in control of ego in reality it just backfires on you, you know. It comes from the backbone. Yes. I think so. Then, when that word identification arises, and I think it's used in a way of it's pointing to self-realization, and so my understanding is that the self-realization happens when misidentifications ceases to be, and when then identification with the psychic being just opens up, and so that itself. It means that in that moment the identification is not with the ego. That is my best understanding. And so when that is let go, then the ego becomes transparent. It's not giving that life force, and there's no need to get rid of it. And so it's kind of been on some level shown to me, and on some level I see it being repeated through the teachings, or through the writings. And so, yeah, because that's what I feel, it's just so hard for people when I understand when people say it's so hard to meditate, you know.
It's harder
to meditate.
Right, yeah.
My best understanding is that because there's identification with ego, and it's ego trying to meditate. And it is not the one who is, it's hard to use words. Because often we are talking about something that is beyond words, something that is before concepts, something that was there before a concept arose. You know?
Ideas came second, ideas came first.
Yeah, you know, and so that is why I find I stumble sometimes, but yeah, so, but that's what I would like to add about how I feel we fall into a trap of trying to fight with the ego. Yeah, so, yeah. And I suppose stopping the fight with the ego, and again, it opens up, it takes the layers off the psychic being that's, you know, that for it to shine through and kind of. Because I feel like the more we free ourselves up from those mechanisms, those survival mechanisms, the less we'll fight with the ego, the less we'll fight within ourselves, you know. Somehow, naturally, just the space is created for the psychic being. It's not burdened. Organization, about what I was going to say was, a lead is created. It is given by the opening of surrendering, the fight with ourselves, the trying to be in control of the ego, you know, trying to turn a story of me into a better story, you know, just somehow the organization is more, just happens, there's less effort in organizing things. Something else takes charge. That's what I feel. So yet again, I'm talking about an approach to organization from a psychic perspective, to allow the psychic to free it up. Yeah.
What if the ego is just another dragon?
A what?
A dragon.
A dragon.
Just another dragon. It's an evolving dragon. It's one that gets reinforced by other dragons. Another dragon says, "Oh, why are you such a greedy dragon?" And you're like, "Oh, I'm a greedy dragon." Your ego becomes a greedy dragon. Maybe you don't get food for a month and then you become a very hungry dragon. And then the outside people see you as a frustrated dragon, whatever. But at the end, it's maybe just still a dragon that is being created and manipulated on the spot. If you take away the observer in a situation, in an experience, if you take away the experiencer, the person who's experiencing, all that remains is perhaps just the experience itself. The dragon, which is, well, we used the word filter also previously, and it's a very intricate filter that has built up probably also before you were born. The formation perhaps of this filter started way before you were born and has come up with all the stories, right? Like if you ask me, who are you today? I can tell you a million kind of stories of how I am, how I'm supposed to act, what I am proud of, what I am, whatever. But at the end of the day, when you take away that experiencer and you sit two of these beings in front of each other, all they're doing is just experiencing each other, right? Without that preconceived notion of who it is that is experiencing, it just becomes an experience. And in that way, then perhaps the positive experiences and negative experiences also don't really matter. It can't be judged upon to be something positive or negative, it just is. And I think we're going more and more away from the, the organization aspect.
It's all connected.
But like the ants in an ant hive, I wonder if they think they are independent beings as well, that are with their own will and with their own volition, even though they're just following the pheromones of the ant that went right before it. I wonder if it thinks, well, my name is Joss, and I'm the best worker in my hive. I have dreams, I have aspirations. Yeah, and I think I think it might be possible to just step away a little bit, a few steps back, and say, oh, I'm just another ant in a colony. What's our colony trying to do? And can we, as an entire colony, perhaps shift where we're going from this path, where we're kind of eating up everything around us, to another path where we're also enjoying the company of everything around us as well? Because a nourishing aspect, yes. Because I like the idea of just us all being feelers in the universe, but that can also very quickly become nihilistic in a way, and maybe that's my own colored lens kicking in. Yeah, it might be nice to, if we're here anyways, to try have, well, fun with each other, right? And also, I'm having a great experience. Hopefully, the next person can also have a great experience.
Yeah, I think that idea of fun is a very, very important one, because one of the worst things we can do as humans is to worry. And if you're worrying about your spiritual progress, or if you're worrying about your ego, that can never really lead to anywhere good. So one of my way of measuring, if I am ever introduced to someone as a spiritual teacher, one of the things I look for is how often do they laugh. And usually they laugh all the time. because being a human being is a really funny thing to experience. And yeah, if you can take worry out of the equation in terms of your spiritual growth, it really, really helps a lot. Literally laugh at yourself when you fail. It's one of the best things you can do. Because also the worst, most terrible thing we did in our life, 100 years from now, no one is going to care. In fact, probably right now, not very many people care. Humans I'm becoming more and more interested in the idea of the human machine, and learning how to operate this machine that I'm currently housed in. The first thing that made me aware of the power of human beings was when I first went to a big rock concert. I went to Manchester Main Road Stadium to see Pink Floyd. And so it got about 70,000 people in the same place at the same time doing the same thing, which was projecting love towards the stage, towards these guys on the stage. And when you've got that many people focusing love on something, it's a tangible thing. You know, you can feel it in the air. And I'm sure, you know, in large religious meetings, sports events, it will probably be a very, very similar thing. Yeah, I don't know if this is the right forum for it, but if anyone's having difficulty meditating and slowing the whirling thoughts in your head, one thing that I learned while I've been here in Auroville from a teacher who came to Auroville is the link between movement and breathing and brain waves. So if your brain is in what they call the high beta, chattering, spinning hamster in a spinning wheel going round and round and round, the way to stop it is to move slowly and breathe slowly in unison. This is why things like Tai Chi and Qigong are such powerful things. Because I do this every morning now, and you can just consciously slow down your brain waves. So it's not so much that you're not thinking, but you don't care if you're thinking or not. It doesn't matter. Thoughts might come and they'll go. And I've just been amazed at how I found out I could do this. That my body and my mind are all part of the same machine, and there's ways that I can change my brain if I want to. If I want to really slow things down, I can do it. And it's not difficult, really isn't difficult.
I mean, if I can just add at the end, I really dreamed that this kind of system or organization, to go back to that part, it's possible. I don't think the goal is to get to a place where everybody is organizing through their psychic being. I think the role of the organization is to get people to that psychic being. That's where the need for organization stops, perhaps, once you have psychic being. And maybe Auroville can become that kind of safety net where people can really start to feel safe, start to feel at ease, not because they're not working on themselves, no, but as a thing that is provided as a general overall, so that people can start really accessing their entire being instead of being caught up more regularly at that survival instinct phase or that emotional outburst phase or shutting in phase, whichever it is. And really be that kind of incubation center for, well, I mean, it's funny, like the next level of consciousness, right? Like Mother was talking about, the cradle. Laboratory of evolution, why not? So that it's not, the goal is not to organize as psychic beings, the goal is to organize to become psychic beings.
So thank you for this nice and friendly conversation, and see you soon for another exploration. Thank you.
Thank you for listening to this testimonial. If you would like to take part in this project on the inner being, or if you have any questions or comments for our team or participants, please feel free to contact us using the email at the bottom of this web page.
This is Auroville Radio, voices from the city of dawn.